Hey, welcome to the channel where we show you how to put some prep in your step. Today we're going to talk about the blog that CJ Mays and I recently collaborated on, where we took the curvy tournament bracket that he had made in Tableau using the curvy bump chart from the Flurlich twins, and we ran that through prep and using some NHL data to try and figure out how do we take that data set and make prep do all of the necessary modifications, pivots, and all of that to get it in a nice, clean structure to where all you have to do is swap the data set and it plugs in nice and cleanly. Now, we're going to go through the build process of that and sort of why I made certain decisions, why I did certain things the way I did. And so that way you can kind of learn what that was like and then maybe even modify it for a different sport. But I mean, this is really a very, very specific use case. So I just felt like going through this build process might be beneficial. So let's dive into it. So before we jump into the prep flow, let's take a look at where the data was sourced from. So this is hockeyreference.com, and it has stats on players, teams, seasons. So I knew I needed the regular season data because I needed to define where each team was going to start, who they were matched up with in the first round. And then I needed the postseason to go through and really outline who was winning each round and who made it through. And so the way this data was structured, if I come to seasons, here's the regular season data. And so we've got both conferences and then the divisions within each conference. And so we've got their total points. And luckily, whenever I export this data set, it's going to have a lot of this already ranked for me, but I am going to have to do some re-ranking. And then, so if I look at the playoff data as well, let me go to seasons and playoffs. And so this, as you can see, shows the team ranks, and then it shows who won how many games, but it doesn't show, it actually doesn't show the matchups. This table here does, but the table that has these points doesn't. So the prep flow is going to kind of go through their rankings, the games won, to trace through who was winning each round. So let's take a look at the prep flow. Now, here's what the finished prep flow looks like. And you can see there's a lot of stuff going on here. And what this piece at the end is here, this is actually the curvy bump chart prep template. So I basically had to build out all the way to this union step. And then the rest of this, I just pasted in my prep template. I had to make a couple of changes, but for the most part, it was doing exactly what I needed it to do. So +1 for prep templates. But yeah, so let's kind of dive in and rebuild some of this so you can see why I did certain things and how it ultimately all came together. So this is what we end up creating with that data set that comes out of prep. So if I take a look at this, there's actually some points here that need to be defined to make sure this maps out properly. So this is sort of the challenge, right? The curves, the calculation for all of that was part of the original template from the Flurlich twins. And then when CJ made his bracket template, it kind of mapped out how those need to come together from two different sides. But in order for the prep flow to get those points right, then I need to make sure that the matchups here for each round are correct and that the winner is passing through each round. So if I go to format here, and let me show my lines. So I can show some grid lines here, right? And then if I show my axes, let me show my header there, show my header here, show header here. And so here you can see, here's some points happening. So Colorado here is starting at 1-0, right? And then over here, we're at 10-0, or yeah, y-axis is at 0 here. And I've reversed the axes also. So this is how I got to get the points to line up. Now, if we look at how we need to start building this out, you can see I've connected to 3 different data sets here. So like I talked about, there's that regular season data, there's that postseason data, but then I've also got this NHL team list, because whenever I go in and export the data, it doesn't have the full team names, or it doesn't have the conference and the division and all of that stuff. And so I use the teams to kind of bring all of that information in together. So let's go ahead and start building that out. So the first thing I'm going to do, I've got this NHL team list and I'm going to bring this in. Now what you'll see here is just pretty simple. I've got the conference, the division, and then the city for each team. Now I didn't end up using this, I don't think, but I decided to go ahead and include it just in case I use this data set for something else. But I thought about trying to export this from Wikipedia to use the Wikipedia API to incorporate some Python in here, but that turned out to be way more complicated than just, there's only 32 teams, so it was easier to just create an Excel sheet because this information doesn't change very often. So that ended up working out just fine for me. So I've got that in here. And the only thing that I ended up really doing, because there are some of these team names, and I think really it's just St. Louis Blues. So in the team name data set, St. Louis Blues has the period there, but in the export from Hockey Reference, it doesn't. So I went in here and then I cleaned and removed punctuation from here, just to make sure that when I do a join on that team name, everything lines up. And so I'll call this remove punctuation. And if you want to see like the full flow, I encourage you to go to the blog that CJ wrote and download a copy of that prep flow, and you can follow along with me, or you can build it out here. There's a bunch of comments that I wrote out in the description for each step in the flow that you can download. So that might be helpful. And I'm not going to re-comment everything out here just for the sake of time. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my regular season data. So I got regular season data here, and I'm going to bring this in. And so when I take a look at this, you can see I've got a rank. I've got the, this is called F2. So I've got some field names I need to clean up, and I've got a lot of information here, most of which I don't really need. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call this team. So I'm going to rename F2 to team. And then there's at the bottom, there's this row called, league average. And so I'm not going to need that. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to exclude that. And then you can see these star values and what this is indicating. It's basically indicating who clinched the playoffs. So, but I don't really need that because that's what this flow is going to calculate for me. So I'm going to clean, remove punctuation. So now that I've done that, the last thing for me to do is I really just need the team and the rank. That's all I need, because the rank is in there. If the rank wasn't in there, I'd need to do some calculations to figure all of that out. Luckily, it's in there, so I don't got to worry about it. I'm going to take this and only keep those fields. And I'm just going to call this clean team because I cleaned the team name field. And there we go. That's my regular season data. And so I can call this NHL regular season data. Perfect. Now I've got those two. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to join these two together, because this is going to bring in my conference and division information. So I've got the join. It detected the join on team name. Perfect join, all of my rows included. And so now you can see all it did was bring in that conference and division information to go with my rank. And so what I'm going to do in this step is I'm just going to take the team name that has the -1 next to it, and I'm going to remove that one because I don't need it. There we go. I'm going to call this conf/div because that's what I'm bringing in. I'm bringing in those pieces of information. So perfect. We've got that in there. Looking pretty good so far. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to rank each team, because even though I've got this rank here, this is the rank based on the entire league. And so now I've got to go in and consider, where did each of these teams fall based on their conference and within their division, because that's important for setting up the first round matchups. So let me go into a clean step here. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rank by conference. I'm going to create a calculated field here and call this conference rank. And I'm going to say partition by conference. I'm going to order by the rank field and in ascending order, and I'm going to do a new rank. And I'm just going to use rank because I know none of these ranks are duplicates. And so this is going to, for each conference, take that rank value in an ascending order and then provide a new rank. So the lowest rank, so number 2, if number 2 right here, you can see Colorado Avalanche is in the Western Conference. And so what's going to happen here, if we take a look, this row here is going to become 1 for the Western Conference. And then this rank 3 here in the Eastern Conference is actually going to become rank 2 in the Eastern Conference. So let's take a look. Supply. And that's exactly what happened. So you can see the original rank for the Hurricanes was 3. If we put the spotlight on that, and now it is 2 in the conference. And then Colorado Avalanche league-wide, its rank was 2, but in the Western Conference, they were ranked 1st. So good direction so far. Now we need to do the ranks in the division. So let's create a calculated field for division. Call this division rank. And we'll say partition by each division. So for each division, I need to order the rank field in an ascending order. And we're going to use the rank calculation again. So let me apply that. And so now you can see for each division, so the Florida Panthers were 1st in the NHL. So they were then 1st in the Eastern Conference and 1st in their division. And so each division is comprised of 8 teams. And this is important because only the first 3 teams in the division are going to be guaranteed a spot in the playoffs. And then there is 2 wild card spots in each conference. But that is not based on the division, that's based on points in the conference. So again, top 3 teams in each division get a spot in the playoffs, and then there are 2 spots remaining per conference that can be earned. So this is why I had to set up some of the logic to work this way to make sure that those wild card spots were chosen correctly and to make sure that the matchups are done correctly. And so we'll get into some of that. Let me go ahead and save that there. And so now that we've got those, the last thing I've got to do is set up the seed. And so the way that I set up the seed is by saying, so let me create a calculated field. And we're going to call this seed. And we're going to use the if calculation. And so basically, if the division rank is less than or equal to 3, then I'm going to take the left couple of letters, first letter of the division. Let's take that first letter, and I'm going to add the division rank, because this is just an easy way for me to identify what that seed is. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if it's one of the top 3 teams in the division, this seed field is going to identify it as a playoff team. So let me save that. And so this is A1, meaning the Atlantic Division 1st seed, Atlantic Division 2nd seed, and Atlantic Division 3rd seed. So that was really just for me to be able to really easily see, okay, these are the first 3 seeds from that division. And none of the divisions have the same starting letter, so I go with that. And that's also how it's broken out in, if you look like on Wikipedia and look at the playoff bracket there, they use the same lettering. So I figured keep it the same. All right. Now that we've done that, what we're going to do is we're going to define the wild card ranks. And so let me go in here. Let me just name this rank. And then so I'm going to go in and add a step for the wild card rank. So let's call this WC rank. So this is where it starts to get a little tricky. So what I did here was I created a calculated field, called it WC rank, or actually wildcard rank. And I said, if the seed is null, then I want to return that rank. Otherwise, it should be no. Let me save that. So now I'm only returning their NHL, their league-wide ranking, if they are not currently seeded. So I'm basically saying I only want to consider teams that are not currently seeded. And then I'm going to take any team that is currently seeded and exclude it from this step. Because now I only want to consider unseeded teams. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say another wildcard ranking calculation. So to start stacking on top of it, one of the nice things in prep is if you create a calculation with the same name, it's going to replace the previous one because the changes in prep happen in order. So I can create another field called wildcard rank, and it's going to replace this first one. So I don't have to create a duplicate, rename it, and then delete the old one. And so we'll call this, or we'll say now we want to partition by each conference, and we want to order by the wildcard rank. So the field here that was returned in an ascending order, and we want to use the rank function. All right, so I can take that and apply that, save. And so now what we've got here, you can see within each conference, I now have where they would have ended up since they didn't make the playoffs. And so you can see this is not division specific. So for example, I can have two teams in the same division hit the wild card because that spot is not, there's no limit for the division. It's just based now on what's remaining in the conference. So now that we've got that, what I can do is say, okay, basically what I want to do is just keep these two ranks. So I only want the first two from each conference because those are my wild cards. So now that I've got those, the last thing for me to do is just remove whatever I don't need. And all I really need here is my team name and my wildcard rank. And so I'm going to keep those fields. And there we go. So those are my wildcard teams from each conference. And I'm going to go ahead and change the color of this because I'm actually going to need to use this here in a bit. Change that color again. Okay. So right now what I'm about to do is I'm about to do a self join to make sure that now I can add those two wildcard ranks back into my main data set. All right. I'm going to do a self join. And I'm going to do a left join because I still want all of the records from this step here. And then I'm going to just take the duplicate team name here and remove it. And so now you can see here, I've got my original data set, right? But then the teams that are in the wild card, those have their wild card rank. Perfect. Now what I can do is I can recalculate my seed field. But first I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this join WC info. Again, all of the documents or the descriptions are in that prep flow if you want to download it. I'm just renaming my steps for the video. All right, so the seed, what I'm going to do, I've already got a field named seed, but I'm going to create a new one and call it seed again to replace the original one and say if the wildcard ranking is not null, then I want to return WC plus the wildcard rank. Otherwise, null. Or actually, otherwise C, sorry. So if the wildcard rank is not null, then I'm going to get this abbreviation WC and the rank. Otherwise, it's going to return the seed field. So let me apply that. So now you can see I've got WC1 and WC2 for my wildcards. And the other fields also still have their seed values. Perfect. And now I'm going to do, because I don't need the remainder of these teams. All of these unseeded teams, they are not in the playoffs. We don't need those for our playoff bracket. But now I've got my playoff teams. It's perfect. And so I can call this seed. All right. So getting through this, just a couple of more things to do here. The first thing, I need to create my matchups, but because it's not as straightforward as you would think, I've got to do a little bit of manual setting of these values here. So, and I've got to do it by conference, really. And so I'm going to add a clean step here. I'm going to call this Western. And so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to keep only my Western Conference playoff teams. And then I'm going to create a calculated field here. I'm going to call this time. And the reason for that is because this is where we start plugging in the values that are going to fit into the workbook template. And so if you recall, when we looked at the bracket, it started at the 0.0, right? So this is what this value is. It's starting it at the 0.0. Now I'm going to rename my team. I'm going to call this dimension, because again, we're starting to set up the fields to just plug right into that template. Next, we're going to create a calculated field, and we're going to call this division order. And what this is going to do is this is going to basically let us know how we need to structure these fields to set them up correctly for our matchups. And so we'll say order by, or actually, sorry, we're gonna use a fixed calculation. And we'll use fixed at the division. I need the minimum rank. And the reason for this is, in the matchups, in order for me to set this playoff bracket up right, the team or the division that had the highest ranked team in the conference is going to be my first division. And then the team that had the lower ranked teams in the conference is going to be my second division. Now the wild cards, the matchup for the wild card is that the first ranked team in the first division goes against wild card 2. And then the first ranked team in the second division goes against wild card 1. And so that's some of the complexity and why I set it up this way. There probably is a different way to handle it. This is just the way I decided to handle it. So if you decide to go through and modify this and you come up with a more efficient way, maybe one that's a little bit more dynamic, I'd love to know about that. But yeah, so all this is doing is just letting me know how to order these fields. And so now that I've got that, so what this tells me is that if I click 2 here, so the Central Division had the higher ranked team, and the Pacific Division had some lower ranked teams. So my order is going to be that my Central Division, whoever was top seed in the Central Division is going to go against the second wild card. And so now what I'm just going to do is basically recalculate the division order. Now that I've got that value, I'm just going to say, okay, order by that number. And this is just so I get a 1 and a 2 versus a 2 and a 6. Perfect. Here we go. So now that I've got that, now I'm going to create a rank field, an actual rank field instead, because this is what's going to help our template. So I'm going to say, this is where it starts to get a little manual, and I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this in here for time's sake, but I'll explain it out. And so what I'm doing here is I'm saying if the division order is equal to 1 and the division rank is equal to 1, then 0. So this is my starting position. My rank field is what's placing them on the y-axis in the Tableau workbook. So if the division order is 1, so this is the first division, and this is the first seed or the top seed in the division, then this is the team that goes on top in my y-axis. Then if this wild card rank is 2, then 2, because the top seeded team in the top division goes against wild card 2. Then if the division is still the first division, but we're the second seeded team, the position is 4. If it's still the first division and it's the third team, then the 6. So again, what this is really doing, and the reason why I had to do this manually, is because of that condition where the top seeded team in the top division goes against the second wild card, and then the top seeded team in the second division goes against that other wild card. So that's what this is doing here. And again, this, I kind of racked my brain over this, and maybe I ended up overcomplicating it in my head. This is just the way that I decided to go about it. But again, there's probably a more efficient way to do it. There we go. So now those positions are good. What's going to set up if I look here in the workbook, see there's 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14. Those are the starting points for the first round. And that's what I've set in that rank field. All right. So now that I've got that, I'm going to then just sort my field. And this is something that I typically do just to make sure I've got things in order. It helps me visually kind of lay it out. And so what I mean by that is there's not a way to really sort fields here. And so this kind of forces prep to sort it. So basically taking that rank field and sorting it in ascending order by using another rank function. And this is what I mean. It's basically going to return all of that and rearrange it in the correct order. And what this allows me to do is confirm that my matchups there are happening correctly, which is exactly what we wanted. The first seed against the second wild card, and then the next two seeds against each other, and then that first seed against the wild card, and then the next two seeds against each other. Everything's looking really good so far. All right, so we're going to repeat this for the Eastern Conference. And so I'm just going to take this and copy it. And then I'm going to click here and insert, or actually, sorry, copy that. It should allow me to paste it here. Interesting. That's fine. I'll just copy, paste. There we go. All right. And I'll call this Eastern. And so for this one, I'm just going to change my filter here. So I'm going to edit, go to Eastern, save. And then for here, my starting value actually needs to be at a 9. Okay. So I'm going to set that to 9. And then for my dimension, that's all stays the same. This stays the same. All this is good. The only thing that changes is this ranking field. And so again, for this, or does it change actually? No, it does not change. Okay, so everything else stays the same. Cool. So then what I can do is come up to my my Western field, and there's a couple of fields I need to remove. So let me come back up here. And so I need to remove the conference rank, division rank, wildcard rank, division order, and RK fields. So I'm going to need to remove this, 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 and this. So let me remove those fields. So we end up with sort, rank, time, seed, dimension, division, city. Perfect. So let me come back down here and remove the same from those. So, and rank, wildcard rank, conference rank, division rank, and what else? Division order. There we go. All right. So we've got all of those removed. We've got our conferences. All of our matchups are looking great. Just to confirm, again, we've got first seed against second wild card, first seed against first wild card, based on the sort order, the rank positions here. So everything is looking great so far. So now all I need to do is union these two together to bring that all into one table. And then I'm going to go ahead and come here. I'm going to remove this table names field because I don't need that. And I'm going to go ahead and remove the sort field because I don't need that anymore. And so now we've started to get basically the foundation for what our data set needs to look like, right? We've got, this is our first round. This is the foundation that's going to set those starting points. And that was all just based off of the regular season. So now what I need to do is take the postseason data, those wins, to determine, I know it takes 4 wins to win a round. And so based on these matchups, whoever won 4 wins will move on to the next round. And then in that second round, whoever won 4 times moves on to the next round. And so this is where some of the a little bit of craziness starts to happen. And again, maybe there's a better way to handle it. This is just the way that I decided to go about it. So I'm gonna go ahead and call this union const. And then I'm gonna bring in my postseason data, all right? And so let me find it here. And the first thing I'm gonna do is go to my team field. You can see there's this league average. I'm gonna exclude that. Then I'm gonna come here and remove all punctuation because of the St. Louis Blues. And then I'm only gonna keep the team and the wins because I just need those to determine, oops, I removed those. I needed to keep those. Take team, win, keep only. There we go. So now that I've got that, bring that over here. Call this clean team again. Take that. I'm gonna join this here. I should just join on dimension to team. There we go. And then I'm gonna go ahead and remove the team field here because we're gonna use dimension to fit into the template. And so now you can see we've got those and we've got that postseason rank. All right. So let me just call this join postseason. And so now we start the fun. What I mean by that is I'm gonna create a clean step. I'm gonna call this quarterfinals. I'm gonna create a calculated field. Call this round. Call this conference quarterfinals. Okay. And then I'm going to create a calculated field that says round 1 win-loss. So basically, if the wins are less than 4, then the team lost, else they won, end. I just used those because it was a little bit easier for me as this grew to trace other than true and false, right? Okay, so if they did not win 4 games, then they lost, right? Let me save that. And so now I can see if I click on 1, these are the teams that moved to the second round in the playoffs. And I know that to be true based on their total number of wins, and I was following the playoffs this year. So those 4 teams, or sorry, not those 4 teams, those 8 teams won and moved on to the next round. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically take this, I'm going to copy it, or create another step, sorry. I'm going to call this one semifinals. And this time I'm going to create a new round. I'm going to replace my round field. Call this one conference semifinals. Okay. So now I've got this conference semifinals. Let me make sure. I'm going to create a new calculated field to see who won and lost. Round 2, win and loss. And I'm going to say if the wins are less than 8, then lost, else, won, end. Because in order to get through the first 2 rounds, they have to have won 8 games. So now I know if they haven't won that many, then they were knocked out in this round. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start creating new ranks because I need to make sure that whenever they move through to the next round, they've got a new matchup and it flows in that curve shape, right? So we'll call this new rank, and we'll say partition by the conference and by whoever won the round 1s, and we'll order by their rank in ascending order. By their rank in ascending order. So this is going to be their new rank. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a calculated field. And this, I'm doing this just to set the points. Again, there might be a better way to do this more dynamically. This was just the way that I decided to handle it. And I'm just going to paste it in here for time's sake. But basically this 1, 5, 9, and 13 is the new points that I need my teams to line up on to give it a nice curve. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and come here and remove this field. And I'm going to create another field called time, or at least replace the field called time. Because now that those teams have won, I need those teams to go in a layer, right? So I'm going to create this and call it time. And again, just pasting it in here, but I'm just saying for the Eastern Conference, they're moving from this way in. The Western Conference is moving this way in. So that's why I'm setting those here. Perfect. So now that I've done that, now I'm going to keep or to create another. And so I think I'm just gonna copy and paste this here. So I'll call this conference finals. And here I'm going to rename round to conference finals. Oops. I'm going to change this calculation and call it round 3 win-loss. And say if they've haven't won 12 games so far, then they've lost. New rank. Oh, and here, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say for round 1, right? Now that we've kind of gotten this far, I'm only going to keep the ones that won at least that many. Okay. Then we've got a new rank, and then we've got rank again. And this time I'm going to change the values that happen in my rank. And I'm also going to use in my new rank here, instead of partitioning by round 1, I'm going to partition by round 2. Here, I need to set my new values. So again, the reason why I'm setting this, if we look at here, 3 and 11, and we look here at Tableau. So we've got 3 here, right? And we've got 11 here. So I'm setting the point and basically saying, this is where this bracket needs to end up, and this is where this bracket needs to end up. Okay, perfect. Remove new rank. And then I need to do one last step again and set my conference values here in time. And again, the reason I'm doing that, you say if it's Eastern Conference, I'm moving it to 7, Western to 2. Let me come in here so we can see the Eastern Conference. I need it to move. And for Eastern, it's a little bit confusing because I've got it kind of shifted over one. But right now, basically, I'm saying the conference here needs to go from right here to right here. And the conference here needs to go from here to here. So earlier when we set the 3 and the 11, we were saying, hey, go from here to here. And then when we set the 7 and 2, we're saying go from here to here, right? So now that we've got that set up, let's do that again, right? It's fun. Copy this. Paste it, copy, paste it, scooch over here a little bit, call this cup final. Okay, we're moving along. So for the cup final, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say here, I'm going to remove this filter because I don't need this anymore, but up here, I'm actually going to keep only the winners from round 2 onward. I'm going to say here, I'm going to call this round Stanley Cup Finals. Here, I'm going to recalculate the round 4 winner and loser. Say if they haven't won 16 games and they've lost. For the new rank, we're going to use the round 3 win-loss. For our positions here that we're setting, we're going to use basically just say it's moving to 7. So again, let's pull this up here. So whoever won, they go from here down to 7 right here. Okay. So we'll save that. We'll move to the new rank field. And then for the time, we're saying if the case is conference, or the Eastern Conference 6, Western Conference 3. So again, the winner here, we moved them down to 7, and then said, okay, if they are in the Western Conference, we move them here. And if they are in the Eastern Conference, we move them here. So that's why I'm doing these points manually, to make sure they end up exactly where I want them to. Okay, so there we go. We're getting there, almost done. I think we just got to do this 2 more times. Let me copy here, paste it again. And like I said, this was just the best way that I could think of, probably a more efficient way. So if you find it, love to see it. I'm going to keep only the winners at least up to the 3rd round. And then this is going to stay the same. I'm going to change some points here. So here for time, I'm going to call this 5 and 4. I don't need this calculation anymore. For a new rank here, I'm going to change this to the round 4 win-loss. For the rank here, I'm actually going to move this up a little bit. Okay. And then for round, I'm actually going to change this one up a little bit, because I'm going to say, instead of just calling this Stanley Cup final, I'm going to say if they won it, then they are the champions. Otherwise, they are the, they just made it to the finals, right? So let's save that. And so you can see we've got a row here with champions. And let me also just only keep whoever won here. Move that up. So now you can see, let me move down here. Tampa Bay made it to the finals, and Colorado were the champions. Perfect. Okay, so now the last thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna do this one more time, and that's only because if you see here, let me go back real quick. So whoever won, like instead of both of the teams are gonna meet, and there's gonna be this blank space here. So I want whoever won to overtake that space. And so in this case, it was Colorado, so I need them to go this way. But if it happened to have been Tampa Bay that won, I would have wanted it to go this way. So maybe I'll update this next year, and whoever was from the East Conference will win. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that space in there was filled. So the last step we're going to do is we're going to copy this one more time. I'm going to copy. Copy. Let me actually call this winner. Copy. Paste here. Let's go call this final step. Here we go. And for here, I'm just going to change this. So for here, just want to keep only these. I want to call the round Stanley Cup champions. And then for my time field, I'm just going to say, based on whichever conference the winner was, they're filling in that space. Don't need this, this, or this. And so there we go. There is our final step in our winner. And so now what I can do is I can union all of these together to create our actual structure. I'm going to add all of these to our union. Create this cool little shape here. And call this union structure. And so now I'm going to remove the table names, the round 1, 2, 3, and 4 win-loss columns. And then I'm also going to remove the win column, move fields. So I've got our dimension, the seed, the round, the rank, time, conference, division, city. Okay. And so now from here, what I can do is I can plug in my prep template. And so let me come here, insert flow. I'm going to browse my files. Let me see. I'm going to pick, I'm going to find my sigmoid bump chart and come over here. And then you can see some nice, let me just rearrange it a little bit to look how I want it to look. Right, oops, sorry. And you can see I actually kind of already preemptively put all of that stuff there, but that's just because that was just easier for me to do. So this is a nice thing about prep templates, right? Like a lot of the times I can just plug in what I need to plug in and it works pretty seamlessly. Now the difference here is that I did use the sigmoid bump chart flow, but I had to make a couple of changes. So first, I had to come in here and rename this field. So there was that field round, and so I had to rename that to actual time. That was the only change I had to make here. And then I believe for the rest of the flow, I don't think I had to make any other crazy changes. I think that was pretty much it. Yeah. And that created, when we come to over here to our densify step, that created the data set exactly how we need it to look with all of the points for our sigmoid chart. So again, all I did here for the final piece was plug in the sigmoid bump chart prep template, which you can find here on YouTube. You can find it on my blog. And I just made this simple change of renaming the actual time field from, I renamed round to actual time. And there we go. So that is how I built the NHL bracket, or at least the prep template for it. And this was the end result. So let me come back in here. Let me remove those grid lines again. And let me hide those headers again. And there we go. This was what we end up with. Hide that there. So next year, whenever the playoffs are done, I can just download the data, plug it in, play it, and get the 2023 Stanley Cup winners up in here. So yeah, like I said, this was a very specific use case. Really only can use it for this one or these couple of data sets. But you can probably take the logic here of the playoff bracket and manipulate it and modify it for tennis bracket, NCAA bracket, maybe football bracket, right? There's probably going to be some choices and some changes you have to make as far as how the matchups start. But yeah, I mean, I hope you got some use out of this. If you find a better way that's more dynamic, like I said, please share that with me. I'd love to check it out. But other than that, hope you found this useful, and I hope to see you in the next one.